would you test for that?
If you could take old data and get abnormal return.
We could take the old data, would we get an abnormal return?
If it was not efficient.
Yeah, we would not probably, right? Because old data is probably not what we want to look at, right? Because we're pretty sure that old data is already there. But we could take information. First of all, what is going to move the market? It's not likely to be old stuff, but it's likely to be new stuff, right? We talked in here the first night of class about the fact that when earnings are released that surprise people, or when earnings are, and you'll see this a lot now. How many of you saw FedEx's earnings statement on Friday? Their earnings really weren't too bad. And so when the earnings first came out, there was virtually no reaction to stock price. But then people started reading the release, and boy, all of a sudden FedEx stock started tanking. Because they said that, current earnings we're probably going to do okay, but boy, we don't like what we see going forward. And I'll let you know a little secret. We look at companies like FedEx, UPS, companies that make corrugated shipping containers like cardboard boxes as really good indicators of what's coming down the road, right? Because if people aren't producing things, they're not shipping them, okay? And if we see FedEx and UPS say, boy, it doesn't look good down the road, folks, there's only one reason for that. If they're not shipping stuff, it's because people aren't buying it, and people aren't making it, and people aren't calling them and saying, hey, I've got to get this box from Atlanta to Macon. And if they spot that trend very early, which they are very good at doing, right, that is not good news for ongoing economic activity going forward. So the FedEx stuff actually sent the market as a whole into a tailspin for a while.
So sustainability is part of that too?
Louder?
Sustainability, don't you think that's part of it?
Define sustainability in that
The green
context.
movement, basically, that's why the people aren't shipping this far, because they don't want to spend any money for the gas and the effects the environment has on it. It's having a big effect on most companies.
Okay. That's interesting. I don't know that sustainability is looked at in this particular context. I'm not sure it shouldn't be, but I don't think it is. I think they're just looking at gut level. I'll tell you another survey that is really interesting, and people get surveyed, and this is proprietary as hell, which means you got to listen to Bloomberg or something, or go on Bloomberg to get it. It's always released to us 2 or 3 days after it's released to the clients of this firm. If you really wanted to know about shipping activity, how would you track that? I mean, true, because shipping activity is a phenomenal bellwether. We talk about UPS, we talk about FedEx, but there are an awful lot of other companies besides UPS and FedEx. I mean, they have a tendency to do, what's called less than truckload shipments. Then you've got less than truckload people like Roadway Express and Yellow Freight and those guys. R&L, you'll see their trucks going. You'll see less than truckload shippers have a tendency to have little trailers tied together because they're taking a few here and a few there and whatever. And then you see the guys with the great big semis, the 50-some-odd footers that are hauling a big load of something from point A to point B. How would you track that activity if you wanted to? Because that would be, hauling stuff, right, that's why cardboard boxes are a very good forward-looking indicator, right? You don't need cardboard boxes if you're not going to put something in it and ship it. Now, cardboard boxes, corrugated packaging material, has been a major, a good forecasting tool for economic activity for years. And you just don't think about this. Well, there's a company that tracks diesel fuel purchases at 7,000 truck stops around this country. And boy, I'll tell you what, does that correlate well with what's going on out there? Because if the trucks aren't moving, they're not buying diesel fuel, and this is truck stop stuff. So it's not the casual guy with a diesel Mercedes, okay? These are the great big trucks going to all of these truck stops, and they have developed a relationship over time with all these people, and they sell these data to a bunch of companies that are interested in looking at that kind of stuff. But anyhow, back to testing for market efficiency. In order to see that the market processes information correctly, you've got to have some surprise, basically, okay? And what we would look at is, okay, suppose, FedEx's information was a surprise. Okay, it should have relatively quickly been impacted in the stock price of FedEx, and it was. But the other thing that we like to see is little impact on the day before this announcement is made, right? Because that's a clear indication that the markets are efficient. If nothing leaked out and there was no reaction on Thursday, and the minute this new information hit the market on Friday, FedEx stock reacted almost instantaneously, then that's a relatively clear indication that the markets are at least semi-strong form efficient, and that's the one we look at most. So that's what it's actually a thing called an event study. where you look at information that has got to be new to the marketplace. And I've done several of these. At a prior university, I acquired the name Dr. Death because we did several studies on the impact on a company of the surprise departure of a CEO. Now, and we did a lot more than just look at the reaction, because some of the companies were performing well, some were performing poorly. And what happened to the announcement that a CEO is leaving, either a surprise announcement they were leaving the firm, or the plane went into the side of a hill, okay, or something like that. Because that clearly, you'd like to think that nobody the day before knew the plane was going to fly into a hill, or they would have stopped the flight, right? And nobody the day before knew that the CEO was going to drop dead on the floor of a trade show, which happened to McDonald's CEO a few years ago. Because if they'd known that the day before, they would have had him seek medical treatment the day before, right? And ordinarily, or almost inevitably, we find a significant instantaneous reaction. Now, whether it's positive or negative, plus or minus, is a function of what the market thought of that CEO before. It's sad, but in some cases, when the leader of a company dies, the stock rallies. Can't come as a huge surprise to any of you. Because, that may be the third way to get rid of a poor CEO, right? Fire him, have a hostile takeover, or put something in his coffee. I'm just kidding. But anyhow, that's how you would test for market efficiency. You look at what happens to the value of the security when new information hits the marketplace. And that's how we test, and how we have become very comfortable with the fact that our markets are indeed semi-strong form efficient. We can actually test this repeatedly. What's the next question?
Municipal bond insurers have had their abilities questioned recently because investors are not comfortable with the securities in the insurers' portfolios. Recent actions by various state and federal agencies have been aimed at improving the quality of these portfolios. This action likely improved which one of the markets we have discussed and why?
Okay, remember this must have been the fall of 2008, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, because this was when the market was just coming apart, folks. And we didn't talk about municipal bonds in here, but it's actually, is it going to improve primary markets or secondary markets? And the argument could easily be made for either of them or both of them. Anything that takes uncertainty out of a marketplace makes it work better, but we didn't talk about that, so let's move on. Boy, that was an interesting time. Oh. I mean, it's still interesting.
How can the agency problem between shareholders and managers be dealt with?
Okay, we've already talked about that today, right? You've got positive ways structuring compensation plans and negative ways firing people and hostile takeovers, plane crashes. I don't recommend the third. What's next?
Assume that you expect to contribute $5,000 each year to your retirement plan for 40 years. Assume that you will earn 8.5% in your retirement investments. Assuming that you unexpectedly have to withdraw the entire amount available 37 years after the first deposit. You want to look good at your 40-year high school reunion.
Yeah.
What financial penalty do you pay for the 3-year original?
Okay. How would we figure this out? How many of you have done these? One of you. It's not a bad idea to have done these before you get here, but I'll leave that up to you. I'll show up either way. Well, first of all, can we figure out how much money is going to be in this thing at the end of 37 years? Can we figure out how much money is going to be in this thing at the end of 40 years? The difference between those two, right, would be what you sacrifice. And I'll tell you what, it may shock you, because remember, you're giving up the last 3 years of that stream, and you could have a pretty good chunk of change in there that you're going to lose 8.5% growth on. But let's just go ahead and do it. Well, Curry, do you do it? At 37, what's this? You all know how to do this, right? It's the future value annuity. Simply 5,000 times the thing I just erased. Okay, where I is 8.5% and would be 37 in one case and 40 in the other. What do you get at 37 years?
I came up with $1,144,688.
And nobody else did these? Anybody else did? Oh, okay, all right. You did them?
Yeah.
Is it roughly the same number?
Close, but
Okay.
not exactly.
Yeah, no, that's okay. A lot of that is, by the way, the number of characters you take your calculator out to. What do we get for 40 years?
$1,478,412.
So that difference is 300 and some odd thousand bucks. Okay, but you did look good at your 40th reunion. Okay. Hopefully at, well, hell, 40, 30, well, 37. Still be driving a Camaro. Maybe 55.